afternoon. So my name is Aqilah binti Mohd Suhaimi, 2023-09D0028. For slides 1, respected lecturer and fellow my classmate, today I will presenting our research titled Job Stress and Employee Performance, a case study of Tenaga Nasional Berhad TNB. Before I begin, let me ask a simple question. Have you ever felt overwhelmed with the assignments, deadline or expectations? That feeling where you feel pressure, tired and mentally drained is what we call stress. Now imagine experiencing that every single day at work. That is the reality for many employees today. This research focuses on understanding what causes stress in the workplace, how it affects employee performance, and mostly importantly, what organization can do to reduce it. We choose TNB because it is a large and complex organization, making it a suitable case to study real workplace stress. Slide 2, introduction. What is stress? Let's start with the basic concept. What is stress? Stress is actually a natural response from our body when we face challenge or demands. For example, when you are about to present in front of class, your heart starts beating faster, your palms may sweat, and you feel nervous. That is your body preparing you to respond. Scientifically, this process involves the brain, specifically the amygdala and hypothalamus, which trigger hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. This hormone help us stay alert and focused. Now, stress is not always bad. There are two types. First is short-term stress, which can actually help improve performance. For example, a deadline can push you to complete your work faster. Second is chronic stress, which is long-term and harmful. This type of stress can affect your health, including your heart, immune system, and even mental health. Different people react to stress differently. Some people can handle pressure well, while others may be overwhelmed quickly. This depends on personality, life experience, and coping skill. Slide number 3 is occupational stress at work. Now let's move into workplace stress, also known as occupational stress. Occupational stress occurs when employees feel that the demands of their job are too high and they cannot cope effectively. In today's fast-paced world, this has become very common. Employees are expected to do more work in less time, often with limited resources. There are two main types of stress factors. First, internal factors, which come from within the organization: heavy workload, poor time management, conflicting job roles, lack of resources. Second is external factors, which come from outside: competition in the market, rapid technology change, increasing customer expectation. In Malaysia, study show that more than 50% of workers experience stress-related problem. This shows that workplace stress is not just an individual issue; it is a national concern. For the slide 4 is about TNB, about Tenaga Nasional Berhad TNB. Now let's look at the organization we study TNB. Tenaga Nasional Berhad is Malaysia's main rail ticket provider. It was established in 1949 and is headquartered in Kuala Lumpur. TNB is responsible for generating electricity, transmitting it across the country, distributing it to homes and businesses. It also operates internationally and connects Malaysia's power grid to Thailand and Singapore. Besides that, TNB is involved in many other areas such as renewable energy, engineering service, telecommunication and data centers. Because of its large size and complex operation, employees at TNB often face high expectation and demanding workloads. This makes it an ideal case to study job stress. Slide 5, problem statements. Now let's discuss the problem. Organizations today are constantly pushing for higher productivity and better performance. While this is good for business, it often puts a lot of pressure on employees. And at TNB, employees face tight deadline, heavy workloads, high expectation from management. On top of that, they are also deal with external pressure like competition and technological advancements. The problem is that many organizations, including TNB, do not have effective system in place to manage stress. As a result, employees may experience burnout, low justification, reduced productivity. So this research aims to understand this issue is more clearly. Slide number 6. Slide 6 is a research objective and questions. This study is guided by 4 main objectives. First, to identify the cause of job stress at TNB. Second, to examine the effect of stress and employee performance. Third, to understand the relationship between stress and performance. And fourth, to suggest ways to reduce stress in the workplace. From the objective, we developed research questions such as, what's cause stress among employees? How does stress affect the performance? Is there a clear relationship between stress and productivity? And what strategy can be used to reduce stress? This question helped guide the entire research process. Slide 7 is significance of study. So why is the study important? First, it helps organizations understand how stress affects employees. Many companies focus only on results, but they forget that employees are human beings who need support. Second is a provide practical solution that companies can use to improve working conditions. Third, it contributes to improving employee well-being, which leads to better productivity and performance on a larger scale. This research can help improve the overall workplace in Malaysia. Slide 8, theoretical frameworks. Now let's look at the theories behind this study. The first is the transactional model. This theory says that stress depends on how a person sees a situation. If they think it's a threat and they cannot handle it, they will feel stress. The second is the job demand control model. This theory explains that stress happens when job demands are high, but employees have tighter control over their work. For example, if you are given too much work but cannot decide on how to complete it, you will feel stress. The third is demand control support model, which adds social support. It suggests that supports from college and supervisor can reduce stress. Michigan's model and Lazarus theory. Now let's take a deeper look at two important theories that help us understand workplace stress: the Michigan model and Lazarus psychological stress theory. First, the Michigan models of occupational stress focus on identifying the main source of stress within organization. According to this model, there are several key stressors that employees commonly face. These include role ambiguity, which means not clearly understand what your job responsibilities are. Imagine coming to work every day but not being sure what exactly is expected from you. This can be very stressful. Another factor is role conflict, where our employees receive conflict instructions from different supervisors. For example, one manager might tell you to prioritize speed, while another tells you to focus on quality. This creates confusion and pressure. Then we have heavy workload, which is a very common in large organizations like TNB. Employees are often expected to handle multiple tasks at the same time, sometimes beyond their capacity. Finally, job insecurity also play a role. When employees are unsure about their job stability, they may feel anxious and stressed, even if they are performing well. What makes this more interesting is that it doesn't just look at the stressor themselves, it also considers individual indifference. For example, two employees may face the same workload, but one may cope well while the other feels overwhelmed. This depends on personality, experience, and support system. Now moving on, Lazarus psychological stress theory. This theory explains that stress is a transition between a person and in their environment. In simple terms, stress doesn't just come from the situation itself, it comes from how you perceive the situation. There are two key stages. Primary appraisals, the person evaluates whether the situation is the threat. Secondary appraisal, the person decides whether they can cope with it. For example, if an employee is given a tight deadline, one person may see it as a challenge, while another may see it as threat. This second person is more likely to feel stress. This theory is very relevant to TNB because employees often face high demands. If they feel that these demands exceed their ability to cope, stress will occur. So overall, both models help us understand that stress is not just about workload, it is also about quality presentation and support. Slide number 10, empirical review. Now let's look at what previous study have found regarding job stress and employee performance. Many research across different country industry have a study in this issue, and the findings are quite consistent. Job stress have a negative impact on employee performance. For example, in the banking sector in Pakistan and Qatar. Studies found that employees who experience high workload and unclear job roles will be more stressed, and as a result, their productivity decreased significantly. Similarly, in engineering college, stress was found to reduce staff engagement. Employees were less motivated, less productive, and more likely to leave their jobs. This shows that stress doesn't just affect performance, it also affects employee retention. In the healthcare sector, nurses who experience high level of stress report lower job satisfaction. This is very concerning because it also affects the quality of patient care. So across different industries, whether it's banking, education or healthcare, the pattern is the same. Higher stress lead to lower performance. However, the good news is that study also highlight solutions. For example, organizations that introduce counseling service, wellness program and supports environments. So improvement in employee well-being and productivity. This shows that stress is not something that cannot be controlled. With the right strategy, organization can reduce stress and improve performance. So in our study, we used their past finding as a foundation to examine whether similar pattern exists in TNB. Slide 11 is conceptual framework. Now let's move on to the conceptual framework of our study. The conceptual framework is basically a model that shows the relationship between different variables in our research. In this study, we identify 4 independent variables, which are the factors that may cause stress: time pressure, workload, lack of motivation, role ambiguity. And we have one dependent variable, which is employee performance. So what we are trying to understand is how do these 4 factors affect employee performance. Let's briefly explain each one. Time pressure refers to situations where employees have to complete tasks within a very tight deadline. For example, being asked to finish a project urgently without enough time. Workload refers to the amount of work assigned to an employee when the workload is too high. It can lead to physical and mental exhaustion. Lack of motivation means employees do not feel encouraged or rewarded for their work. This can reduce their willingness to perform well. Role ambiguity, as I mentioned earlier, means unclear job responsibilities. Based on this framework, we developed 4 hypotheses. All of them assume that these factors have a negative effect on performance. This means that as stress increases, performance is expected to decrease. This framework helps guide our analysis and allow to test these relationships using data. Next slide, 12, research methodology. Now let's discuss how conducted this research. We use an exploratory research design, which is mean our goal was to understand the cause and effect relationship between stress and performance. We also use a descriptive survey method, which involved collecting data directly from employees through questionnaires. The sample size was 150 employees from TNB, including both management and operational staff. Out of these, 136 employees responded, giving us a high response rate of 90%. This questionnaire was divided into 2 parts. The first part collected demographic information such as age, gender, and experience. The second part measured stress and performance using a Likert score from 1 to 5. We also ensure ethical practice by maintaining confidentiality and obtaining permission from the TNB management. In this method allow us to gather reliable and relevant data for analysis. Slide 13, demographic finding. Now let's look at the demographic profile of our respondent. Most of the respondents were between 20 and 40 years old, which represent the active working population. This means our data reflect the experience of employees who are actively contributing to the organization. In terms of gender, about 60% were male and 40% were female. This shows a fairly balanced representation. Education level varied, which is important because different educational background can influence how employees perceive stress. Understanding this demographic helps us interpret the result better, as stress level may vary across different groups. Slide number 14. Reliability and normality test. Before analyzing the data, we need to ensure that it is reliable and valid. We conducted a reliability test using Crunchbase Alpha, which measures consistency. The overall score was 0.758, which indicates good reliability. This means the responses are consistent and trustworthy. We also conducted a normality test to check whether the data follows a normal distribution. Some items were slightly outside the acceptable range, but overall the data was suitable for further analysis. This step is important because they ensure that our results are accurate and meaningful. Slide 15, descriptive statistic. Now let's look at the descriptive statistic. The results show that workload has the highest mean score, which means employees strongly feel that workload affects their performance. Many employees reported feeling of overburdened, both mentally and physically. The second highest factor is time pressure. Employees mention working overtime, including weekends and holiday, which affects their work-life balance. On the other hand, lacks of motivation and role ambiguity had slightly lower scores, but they are still important. This tells us that while all factors matter, workload and time pressure are the most noticeable threats. Slide number 16. Correlation analysis. Next, we are conducted correlations analysis. This analysis helps us understand and relationship between stress factors and performance. The results show there are variable have a negative relationship with employee performance. This means that as stress increases, performance decreases. Among all factors, role ambiguity has the strongest negative correlation, followed by time pressure. This suggests that not knowing your role clearly can be more harmful than even though. Now let's look at the regression analysis, which gives us deeper insight. Regression analysis. The model explanation explains about 33.7% of the variation in employee performance, which is considered significant. The results show that time pressure has a significant negative impact. Role ambiguity has the strongest negative impact. However, workload and the lack of motivation were not statistically significant. This means that even though employees feel workload is high, it may not directly reduce performance unless combined with other factors. Now let's summarize the hypothesis testings. Out of 4 hypotheses, H1 and H4 were accepted. H2 and H3 were rejected. This means time pressure and role ambiguity significant effect. Performance, workload, and motivation do not have a strong direct effect. This is interesting because it challenges our initial assumptions. Summary of finding. Overall, the study showed that the most critical factor affecting performance are time pressure, role ambiguity. Employees struggle when they have tight deadline and unclear responsibilities. After the workload is high, it does not directly impact performance unless combined with other stressors. We recommend that future research include more variables, use the large samples, conduct long-term studies. Limitation includes small sample size, time constraints, limited scope. Thank you.